Alright, today we are finally back in the Oakwood Zoo to build an enclosure that I am very proud of and I've been working on for the past 2 or 3 weeks that I am very excited to show off, and it is the Japanese Macaque enclosure. This is one that took a lot of time for myself and honestly just turned out very pleasing to me and is one of my favorite enclosures we've done so far, so without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Oakwood Zoo, and in today's episode, like I said, we are building the Japanese Macaque enclosure, one of the top, most talked about ones that I've talked about recently, that I finally am starting to build. I like when we do these kinds of enclosures that I've built up to a lot, like in the last episode, or I said like in the Raccoon Dog episode I was going to do this one, but then I felt like going the easier route, so I did Red Foxes first, and that turned out pretty good. That was the last episode, and now we are here with the final animal to add to the section, the Japanese macaque. And I will supposedly final. We'll get to that in a second. But today we are building the Japanese macaques. So this is one that is very exciting to me, and it is honestly one of the bigger enclosures if you just look at it overall. It is a very large enclosure. It started out, if you see, I didn't record all the footage in this one episode because it was just so much footage, and it took me multiple hours, probably like 10 or 15 to actually finish this, with like everything and the details and all that good stuff together. It did turn out as a very big enclosure. In the first week of building this, I actually reached something that I was kind of happy with, I finished the outdoor section in the first week, but it was just that area with the moat and like the little like round red fence kind of like area, and that was really it. So now it is like probably like double that size plus however much of space it is going to have in the inside area. So it was originally probably going to be released probably a week ago on last Saturday. However, plans changed. I believe last week we did the monkey ranking, which I think turned out pretty positive. A lot of people enjoyed that, but I wanted to take some extra time with this one. And again, when I had just like the outdoor area of this enclosure, I obviously needed to do the shelter. So when I tried to do like different shelter ideas and stuff, I originally came up with something a lot bigger than I thought, and I kind of rolled with it because I ended up making it really big, and I honestly think it works really well because it looks really good. And this ended up being a really big shelter that I couldn't really fit with what I had for the outdoor section, so I ended up keeping them kind of like parallel to each other and extending the outdoor area in another entire section to kind of wrap it around and add it to the shelter in a way that would actually make more sense. So overall, it turned out in the end very big, but I honestly am pretty proud of it. I am very excited for it because it looks very nice, and it is not actually fully complete yet as an enclosure because, if I'm being honest and being truthful here, the inside of the building of the enclosure is not done yet. The shelter is not complete. It is just bare bones, like there's nothing in it except for I haven't touched this, so there's things coming through the walls and everything. I have not touched it at all, so that is going to be something that I'll probably do at some point off camera. Yeah, we still have a bit more work to do with that, so this is not a fully finished enclosure. It looks like a final finished enclosure because I didn't include I closed the doors to the building so you can't see inside. I did add, of course, doors for the macaques to get in. I just closed them again so you cannot see inside the mess that is waiting inside. Other than that though, speaking of more work to do in the World of Japan section, there is, of course, if you have watched one of the other Japanese videos that we have, you would have probably recognized me saying that we do have some extra space left after this enclosure, and there is still, of course, a lot of space left. We have a bit of space in between the raccoon dogs and the new enclosure that we have right now. If you look at an overhead shot of the World of Japan, it is the top right of that area, that loop, kind of. So we have a bit of room to work with, and what I am planning to do is a bit big than I originally thought. I do still want to do a Japanese restaurant, but what I think I'm going to do instead is obviously a Japanese restaurant. We're probably going to have another building that is a bit smaller, maybe like a gift shop or kind of like a Japanese kind of like learning center maybe, where you can just learn about the history of Japan and like see some cool artifacts, maybe stuff like that. But also we are going to be building one more enclosure, one more exhibit, potentially. I think this is what I'm going to go with. I am going to be using the European fallow deer as a replacement for the Sika deer, which we don't actually have in the game, but we're just going to be using it in place of that. So the Sika deer is a deer that is native to Japan. It is pretty close in appearance to the European fallow deer, or at least the European fallow deer is the closest that it can get in terms of appearance. And because I wasn't going to use the European fallow deer in my European section anyway, I figured we could use it in here anyway and just kind of work with that to see how that goes. So I think what my plan is to do a kind of like the two buildings, and then as you go behind it, or you go into the restaurant and out a separate exit, then you take your food and there will be kind of like a nice lookout area that you can sit down with your food and you can look out over the Sika deer enclosure. This is also kind of bleeding into the North America section, because the American Express, I think it's the Canadian Express actually, that's what I called it, is the North American section of the zoo, which we'll be starting probably at some point far into the future. But that is going to be behind the Japanese section. So what we'll be doing is we will have the deer enclosure, and then we'll probably have a big forest line in the back of that. But then eventually when we start building North America, you might be able to see parts of it in the background of the forest. So that's probably what's going to happen with that. But we are a far way off of building for the North American animals. That being said though, I did want to do something related to Halloween, and I was considering building for a timberwolf enclosure. Could be cool to do, or like a coyote enclosure maybe. I don't know. I really like doing the wolves because those are like symbolic of Halloween. So that'd be kind of cool to do if we did that for like a Halloween enclosure, kind of. Of course, it would still be realistic and everything. Like, it wouldn't be like with new like Halloween props or anything. It would just be a spooky-ish kind of animal to celebrate the holiday. But then I was also thinking, because Jurassic World Evolution 3 is coming in like in literally, if this is posting on Saturday, that is the 18th. So 3 days until Jurassic World Evolution 3 would be released. That's 10 days away from the Halloween, so I figured maybe we could also just do something in that game to kind of celebrate. Really depends, I don't know. It depends on how well I adjust to that game. I think I will hopefully be able to handle myself well, because it is with stuff that we have already had lots of experience in with these games. But of course, I will see when I get to that. Of course, I do also have a lot of stuff that is personally going on in my life. Like I said, I am supposed to be on a break right now, or like kind of like an ongoing break where the output of videos is supposed to be a bit slower. So far, honestly, I don't think we've had too much of a change. Of course, I've just been keeping to regular Saturday uploads. Like every once and again, I'll upload like a Wednesday or Thursday. Like actually, this past Thursday, I think I uploaded the Jurassic World Evolution video, and of course, I think I'm also going to upload another one on either tomorrow or Monday. Probably Monday. It'll be like the very last enclosure for Jurassic World Evolution 2, so that'll be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, I've also been trying to like post Jurassic World Evolution 2 stuff to kind of get the algorithm to come back to my channel. So like, my channel does post Jurassic World related stuff, so then it'll hopefully influence pushing Jurassic World Evolution 3 videos that I'll probably eventually hopefully be making, or I'm hoping I can be able to make these at a bit of a quicker pace, because I think it will be faster to build things in Evolution 3 than it is in Planet Zoo, of course, because this took several weeks to do. So still very excited for Evolution 3 coming out next week. I am over the moon. There are so many cool reveals and stuff. Very, 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 very thrilled. I suppose we should actually talk about the actual enclosure in this episode. So again, so far we have built for the cranes, raccoon dogs, red foxes, and now we're building for the macaques. And in this enclosure, again, we of course talked about how big it is, but with the actual building and what I've actually like done with like the style of here, the building itself, actually, while intimidating by its size, isn't actually that complex in my opinion. We've built a lot of these big buildings by now, so it's very regular to me, but honestly, with the pieces, with kind of like, with the actual pieces and stuff, like making the walls and everything, it wasn't as complicated as I would usually with like the America's Pavilion and stuff like that. Because of those buildings, you have very weird shapes. With this one, it's more kind of like boxy and square. The roofing was a bit of a challenge with this one, because the roofing, I didn't realize how limited our selection of like the Asian roofing pieces are, because we have no kind of like really curved pieces. We have some for like Indonesia, I believe, but they're really weird. And they're also the thatched pieces. I really thought that we had arched clay tile pieces or clay tile roofs, which we did not. So I ended up combining a like 3 different pieces at different inclines to make kind of like an arched kind of roof piece. So then we'd use that on a bunch of like the actual the roofs, like the top part and also the side wings. So those turned out alright. I did end up having to do some behind the scenes work, I guess, at the tips and like the ends of the buildings. I had to either do the roofing meet the exact edge of the wall, or to let it overhang, you would have to see like the insides of the roofs. Like you would see like some extra stuff that you're not supposed to see. So instead I did that. I let it overhang, but then I covered it up with some bamboo to make it overall like pretty decent. And that's why at the top of the building and that top roof piece, that is why it's kind of like just cut off directly at the wall piece, because if I let it overhang, you would see like the other side of the roof. It's hard to explain, but overall it wouldn't look good if I let it overhang, so I had to do that. It would only work if I had something to cover up like the extra pieces, but again, at that very point, at that very tip of the very top of the building, there's not much I can use to cover it up, so I had to work with what I had. I could have also used kind of like the corner pieces or whatever to kind of make it work, but I don't even think that would work because it just wouldn't fit the angle of the roof. So overall, it didn't work, but I think I overall am satisfied with like the workaround I found for it. But yeah, another thing that was really fun for this build specifically was the building of like the foliage and the scenery, because that was really nice. I liked using like the cypress trees and the little smaller shrubs like the olive tree, stuff that we've already used recently before, like in a lot of enclosures, the creosote bush, saltwort bush, olive tree, lords and ladies plants, hostas. Those things are very like things that I regularly used, but I like how they like kind of like work together in this one, and I really liked using the cypress trees because they're really nice. I also added hanging kind of, I don't know if that's the right word, but kind of like mounted planters on the walls in the planters section, or sorry, they're in the gardening section of the nature tab. When I used the air plants from the Australia pack, I used a few of those in each box planter, so that looks really nice. And overall, I kind of blended the colors into the dry stone, or like the stone wall from the Oceania pack, because that's really also very, very useful. That's like the overall thing, is that the building overall, you'll notice is that it's not really complicated with like, maybe other than the windows, nothing is really too complicated with like how I laid things out. I mainly just used the limestone trim for like the pillars of like the roof, like those kind of angled pieces, and then I used the Oceania piece, like the dry stone piece, for like the bottom half of the walls, and then I used limestone for like the actual wall piece itself. And that's really it. I've used, of course, a few things to make the windows, but I might have got that on camera, I'm not sure. I got like the window pieces that are a bit custom made, but again, you can simply replace those with just the other, like the limestone pieces, or limestone windows, I think, or like the classic windows, actually, they're called, which again, just as good. I think I didn't really like the size of them too much for mine, but again, it would not have made a huge impact if I'd used those instead. And then of course for the door, I just used one of the larger doors that we had. So it's not really a matter of like using like really specific pieces and making like something ultra detailed. It's just more finding the right pieces to use. And again, this whole building as a group is still probably over 1,000 pieces, but it's not because it's really detailed or anything. It's mainly just because I used the right pieces at the right kind of like areas, and that kind of proves that it's not always about like very intricate detail. Of course, like I would say mostly detail that comes in handy with like foliage work and rock work. That is definitely where it comes into play. It is a combination of doing lots of detail with like putting it like everything everywhere and like making sure you're accounting for all the spots, but also with like choosing the right foliage and the right kind of pieces for what you want. But with building, sometimes it's honestly just comes down to just choosing the right pieces instead of using the most ones. Because again, if you watched the pagoda video, you would know that we didn't use a lot of fancy pieces. Again, I might have used a few, I used a few small pieces to make like a pattern on one of the walls, but then after that it was just copying and pasting that same pattern over and over again across the entire building with a few tweaks here and there. Again, it's a matter of using the right pieces, taking your time and kind of like fixing little things, and just making it overall just fit with your vision and making it look good. If you don't like it how it's going, then erase it and start again. That is what I did for the shelter here for a couple times, which I didn't really like doing that. In fact, in the time span of doing the shelter for this, I originally gave up and I started working on a Japanese kind of like tower building for like the Japanese village kind of area, and I spent about an hour and a half on it that night, and then I came back the next morning, looked at it, didn't really like it anymore, so I just deleted it. So you can look, again, it can be tricky like that. You can really like something one minute, and then the next time you come on and it's like, I don't really know if I really made the right decision with that. let's cancel it, or let's get rid of it. So it really depends on what your vision is and what you actually want it to look like. And again, biggest piece of advice is, of course, use your reference image. I use reference images all the time. I specifically use it in the section for a lot of these shelters because I very rarely, I don't have common experience with like Japanese architecture. I don't live in Japan. I haven't been there. I haven't traveled there or anything. So I rely on online images. I rely on other people who have been there to kind of work with what I'm given, which is what we have online, what we have for reference images, which are very helpful. Go on like Pinterest, search up stuff on Google, just in general, and it's very helpful for me, and it's at least for me that it's very helpful, so I can, because I often like to do just kind of work from there. So I like to do like the exterior of like the building, kind of like not copy it but use it as a very strong inspiration, and then kind of tweak things around to make it my own. With like this, I think with this shelter I actually used a bit more freedom, because I remember like the image I was going off of, I don't even think I really used a clear image, like a one set image that I used like last time, but this time I honestly just used more of kind of combining different stuff and honestly just making a shape of a structure that I was satisfied with, and overall that just kind of worked for me. So I put that in, I blended it in with the rest of the enclosure, put up rocks and foliage and stuff to blend everything else in all around it, and it turned out very nice in my opinion. So that is really kind of like my process with the building this. I hope that maybe helped. It's kind of like a, I don't know, like a pep talk, or at least something like a guide to like to keep a thing to keep in mind when building, or just doing like foliage work or anything like that on those lines. I really liked doing my hour-long tutorial last year. I really enjoyed that, and I would want to do something like that again. So maybe I can do something along those lines this week, this year. I was looking back at an older video that I said that was like, we'll do like I said I would do like, for this year I would do like an hour-long ranking of like all the animals, and then looking back at that now, and I was like, well, what was I thinking of that? Why did I promise that? Because not that I wouldn't love to do that, but it's just a lot of work to do. So I don't know if I would love to still do that now, but I would rather maybe do a tutorial instead. I don't know. I'll see what I'm doing. I'll probably do something special for the Christmas season or the holiday season at some point, but that's a bit of a ways to go. So in any case, that is probably all the time I have to talk to you, you lovely peeps, today. We went over future plans of the series. I went over kind of like the building process of this specific build. I really hope you guys enjoyed this build. If you did enjoy this episode, and if you enjoyed the build, then please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on the channel. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to just our audience in general. I've been really trying to like grow a bit more as these new games come out and everything. I wanted to kind of like gain more of a traction, hopefully, and hopefully we can do that with like Jurassic World Evolution 3 comes out, because I really want to like expand these builds to a larger audience, because I really do want more people to see this, because it kind of hurts me specifically with like the Japanese section, because we've gotten a bit less with like interaction and stuff with these specific group of episodes, and this is something that I think honestly is one of my best works in not only the zoo but just in general. So I really hope that we can expand to a bit of a wider, more audience in the future, and maybe by the end of the year, who knows. So we'll see where we're at by then. So if you did enjoy this video, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Of course, there are cinematic shots at the end of the video, as there always is, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys, have a great rest of your day.